Hello, Americans. Hello, intelligence community. Here are names. Names A through Z have been used by systems tactical ulterior than the one, which employed differences where and how its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that are three connected also with the value of truth before this, and with the value of truth knowing that there is more that we don't know, including with that portion that there is an extent we know is true about the future. For example, but if we have denied this, for example, the value of the spring. This was supposed to be valued in the fall. Many seeds in like cold climates, the seeds won't. You can't just save it. You have to cold stratify it. Some seeds you have to scarify them. It means nick it or what? Not expert on that. But in other words, we have been systems tactical ulterior from its own in where and how it is appreciation not only of the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, if by the self or by others to be sensed. In other words, its value to sense. In other words, by any person, we are prevented from using the values of, like, for example, Native Americans first. A breaching method was sustained upon them. And it was sustaining it upon them through names that had already been sustained upon. Native Americans fell last. America fell last, but two, there was already entrenched a torture, extortion, fact human nature, slavery, collusion, even with the difference of that. It assigned the difference. Nature communicates about how we have the same color eyes, black pupils. And with some great cases, we have different color eyes. Sometimes there are exception nature. There are quality aspects in nature about the other species' bodies. It is showing us that we could only use its strength slash might, including as individuals. Like, for example, where we use the value of the word humanity, or where how it is only allowed ever having been heard. Roles of criminal and insidious natures are positive, as collusions with the negative that have been incapable of defending that and of affording correlation by what our founders communicated to have communicated for themselves. For example, this is partially because of the method. We have to understand the method, because this knew we would have to use phrases like criminally foreign influenced, or not use them. Exactly wrong. It uses it's a nature of simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous nature, the identity of hyperrelativity. The part of the reason this has been left out from understanding, there's only three branches of government at every country. The difference between them and what they call the intelligence community. You could begin to discern the difference of this by watching Judging Freedom YouTube channel of Judge Napolitano. Is a YouTube channel with he is with a retired justice who used to work for the court systems of New Jersey. And he has an intelligence community that speaks about how there are subjects in the news. He used to work for Fox News, which is international news and national, and then locations, areas, and states. See, but and this is also there are families with the name Peruda. That's and ones I don't know the name of. God bless everyone of the species names A through Z. You guys here and there, see our suburbs look exactly alike in Russia and America. All exceptions, exception nature in China. Before China's modern country name was used. Already names A through Z had been used as systems tactile terror than as how employed. Not only just by nature, everything's natural, but not everything's natural also positive as its answers and as its roles with every question and answer and difference. And with all exceptions and demonstration of how a special difference is being and has been left out. Otherwise, we would have come to these revelations because they are demonstrated. It is the nature of uses of truth, where and how its identity, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, for example, as the scientific, which to begin to discern it, we could begin with the discernment of how it is not our species as a simultaneous nature that reveals how and why. Our species, even the bugs, have two eyes. Even other species, animals, even the birds, they have the same quality aspects in nature. There's a shared nature of consciousness. All parts of the plant, cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, /S, and the gases with diffusion here, positive or negative, and the water and its elements, individually grouped together, positive or negative, as appreciation of the identity of the cell, as of the identity of the identity of the plant, of a species, body, of individual bodies. With this coming through, this quality of diffusion as its own, distinctly here to note, we're distinctly here to Earth as Earth, to, from, as, with, and for Earth, while especially different. No Earth's a special difference to the rest of space/existence. The nature of the debate and guilt regarding revelations when we begin to observe. For example, we follow all the hyperforensic trail that shows black pupils. We have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. We have exceptions in how nature uses exception nature, the ways we know, finite, grouped, and simultaneous, but also with the value of sequence truth before this, as it was as itself, and the value of what is to come that we don't know, but we know that. And this comes with its contemplation, where it's telling us. This also comes with prayer was inherited as one of the words, just like all the words in the dictionary, where modern religions had to do damage control, where modern countries' founders had to do damage control, but had to stay above, had to stay and be formed as countries and in defenses of themselves as groupings of humanity and of uses of words and values like humanity, like of the human species volume science, now as individual group differences, uses, and humanity voicings, tactical ulterior from how that is manifest and as the answers of our question. The reason that we have to have things, there are reasons that we have to have things published or not to put them in schools. And there are reasons. See, those truths, for example, any nature of truth could be and was used for lies by this hyper foreign body that came from semi-ancient times. It's not the fault of modern countries. In fact, it arranged people who speak for the law, which is people A through Z. I'm not legal. I'm not a lawyer, not police, not a judge, but we have black pupils, white survivors. We have experience to know that they were backed into speaking about things like criminal justice, for example, as rolls with it still, and with a difference. What slavery, what things like Jim Crow laws are about, is about then and now, distinctly, but non-distinctly too, left entrenched. Were roles with the breaching method that effectively, tactically denatured everything to force people to self-value, blaming the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures on other things, those ourselves, while simultaneously obfuscating the identity of the human fact attribute nature breaching method as a scientific value with the identity of relativity / hyperrelativity that is itself as thing, vaccine. So there is quality aspect. There are aspects, and there is the nature of each thing. Distinctly not, again, that identity, not as those species, they didn't invent these quality aspects in nature that we share, and we didn't invent it. People jump in with the word God. See, because the nature of debate, all natures of debate, and resolution of that, where I state collusion /S, certain type of victim / hyper victim at locations A through Z, at species locations, countries A through Z, locations, areas, and states, and then further database locations, further where the science's names are manifest from before modern religious messengers were even born. And since too, they did damage control, but still, this is a criminally foreign influence, criminally engineering of America's republic for which we stand. That which had been outlined and delineated by nature itself, and working and valuing exceptions, the exception nature itself as being led by that identity that is not each thing. It's not each person, but it is anyway. And so many vaccines. The smallest finite detail being left out. This is one of the things that see emotions serve a function. See, but now this is not afforded. The discernment. There's a quality of fact attribute nature at locations originally and still, sickly distinctly from the formal legal location. And with difference, no. They have failed, I self-promote as far as to speak for color. So for America, so white, so red, so blue, so green. The worms no longer walk into the puddles in the suburbs. We took away all the suburbs were designed. Their houses designed in the suburbs long before our founders were even born. The suburbs were designed 17th century. And there were laws against, they were designed north and south sickly distinctly too, but sickly non-distinctly. But sickly distinctly, they had slavery entrenched. And we have our own self-valuing that when they are pretending to counter slavery, when they are blaming other things, others ourselves, for what entrenched it. Our founders told us to blame it on what had them fact-cheating nature tortured and extorted, honestly, leaving not telling any lies. And this would have brought up their fact-cheating nature extortion, torture, and fact-cheating nature slavery, the identity theft, fraud, slanders against themselves, sickly distinctly from everyone else. No one had free speech. Our founders communicated for us to understand how and why they had to counter extort the other founders, and why that was only possible for them because of the value of Native Americans syntactically against themselves fighting to do damage control. Therefore, to simultaneously preserve means to speak for and teach for and value proper the way it wants to speak, for example, about all words, therefore value. As a system, it shows us the difference between temporary positive and lasting positive, which is one of the things hyper additionally shows us, where it shows us the difference between discerning how positives can be used as negatives, and they can be used also to hide what came first, or the relativity of it. In this breaching method showed all formal identities of sophistication and non-sophistication as identities of volume, as descriptions of consciousness natures, as descriptions of identities, therefore names natures. A nature is relativity as identity to positive and negative simultaneously. The same reason and way and why and how values have relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But that is where and how they are completed by its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. Again, which cannot be appreciated properly without appreciating Earth's special difference, and as your own a special difference as itself, where it is concentrated as a special favor to Earth's location. All exceptions and exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other, they come with demonstration /s of the same thing. For example, leads of IDs, and it being more probable and practical that leads of IDs was a scientific value to describe the scientific discernment of force-based nature transfer, being where and how, like for example, predicate acts with facts method, blaming on other things, others ourselves, or preventing being communicated and valued properly what nature is communicating and telling us to understand by having us have black pupils and whites of eyes. And then, for example, can't appreciate that, you can't appreciate the nature of debate proper with regarding if someone wanted to debate, for example, a theory that to say that there's more behind the famous phrase, don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes. I mean, obviously we know things like how our founders had to extort the other founders, how that was only capable by the Native Americans themselves trying to do damage control for nature. That no one, it was already denatured before our founders were born. The design, the suburbs were the houses were already designed, tactically denatured, needing food from other areas, needing to be a part of value nature systems. It only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in natures more and more, if to value. Not just criminal and city since natures are positive treatments, but one as collusions, categorically, individually finite, grouped and together, with the breaching method to keep the breaching method's identity or relationship to ourselves from being discerned. Because it's identity of relativity, positive and negative simultaneously, as collusions with them, as that hyper theater, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, self-valued, and that's sustained, where instances are described, where positive and negative was is described. At each age of fact should be nature. Sickly distinctly. And now see, all exceptions in exception nature. This set this up to sense that through our own. So it's not just by accident. The summaries of American history are tactically delusions wrought and still reliant upon criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects of nature to defend themselves from off all locations, from all database locations, from off all database locations, sustained at those locations, were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, roles with uses of the theater / hypertheater that humanity is, the way it employed by nature, hypernative pure, as each. So one must teach. This is what nature itself shows us to value. To understand American history or any history, you have to understand the breaching method and the nature of itself, having been effective, already having made people self-value, criminally foreign influence, natures of sciences and human potentials, and descriptions of all that's positive or negative as collusions. Because again, the suburbs were designed before our founders were born. And for the torture, extortion, slavery method, A through Z against A through Z, sickly distinctly. So if sickly non-distinctly, even if sickly non-distinctly, but still sickly, it gets discerned, that is the sense. Because all collusion, all uses of difference, no, black pupils. All uses of exception. To a lot of things, people call things politics that are not politics. And where and how those are roles with the use of location / S. Through Z has, or you're not going to hear their voice. There are timed uses of the worst natures of organized crime, of murder, of names next to the body dumping spots, of the killers themselves, of the names associated with the medicine and mental health care of the killers and their family members and people that work with them. Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook has roles with places in Cromwell with the intelligence community. Is involved with Weathersfield intelligence community. Intercities through time. Planting predicate acts roles, fake evidence, identity theft, fraud, slanders, ducking behind identities as overt criminal enterprises for a whole bunch of other countries and news at the same time. Collusions with difference. Then people want to pretend things are personal. They will go out of their way to make a personal problems with people, even as roles with wire crime acts and methods. Just how many ways there are tricks to make people describe things, to making people look like they had conversations they never had a conversation. They have people that had listened on the back of a conversation when someone calls their house, and it makes it look like they had a conversation with before that. Like people with the name Demoro have roles with the FBI and other agencies, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, with telling lies about themselves and others to teachers behind people's backs, and with their roles with home break-ins and people lying to a class family and or with them, and people with the military associated, including in other words, increasingly people tied to Ray Claw and Kathy Tansey. I never had, I have no hard feelings against Kathy Tansey. Everyone's speaking with other people when they want to leave out details and make them up. There was a Judge Smith and there are other judges. They're like judges and their family members associated with to our highway, Hangdog Lane, and conjunctions to it. That are increasingly rules of predicate acts with names increasingly at the campuses I went to, every campus I went to, and it made ties between them. And they used as a crime method our side's roles with all sides on the World Trade Center. Intercities connected confessions. Now, this breaching method affects uses of confessions distinctly from how they're used already remotely, difference of the interbranch legal names. The lawyers' names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Their victims appointed, their appointed victims advocates. Names with the hallways of the courts. How much people tied to Mendez family members involved with attaching little kids and their families to fake conversations at the Wethersfield Police Department with themselves and in real life. Fake ties to people, fake natures of ties to people. They walk by, pretend you had words with them. Literally, with a whole bunch of people with the name Riley and people with the name Brian Silver, and there's a Soulsby. There are more prosecutors and judges involved with courts through time. The Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, and people associated with Connecticut District Court. I found, but I knew at the time, Connecticut people from and before the World Trade Center attack, Hartford courts families, and Connecticut and New Britain Superior Court's families have been planting evidences in federal crimes of predicate acts with facts, and child offenders, child abusers, and they're involved with all kinds of things where people are going to speak for fake as collusion with that with foreign bodies and their own against their own. This breaching method uses the fact that we're going to have to use the name because the species body holds us, needing to be unity, needing to be independent simultaneously, needing to be led by that, by revelations that come with this. See, but we have been systems again, A through Z, tactical terrier than its own, otherwise that one has been sensed. So the value of voting, too, is recorded being and having been used to measure and maintain by the function of the breaching method. As one of the functions of the breaching method to measure and maintain. Collusion. Collusion / as self-valued as all location, area, and states, which have stayed torture, extortion, and factory nature slavery relative to the abuses of you guys when you were kids. And with the differences of how campuses A through Z were better or worse, that difference too is also differentially, especially used worse. Again, nature is constantly, increasingly showing us how to answer questions with a special difference, but relativity to itself and to the value that comes with understanding its parts. Control your hearts. So it is a hyper simultaneous nature that comes hyper additionally, not as us. And then anyway, mixture. This is where. So in other words, One of the things on a mass scale the intelligence was forced Turton to do. See, the same way they were backed with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, even if they made it up, though. See, to use this method, we have to say, for example, what were the witch trials about? Even if they were completely made up, regardless if they were completely made up by the breaching method itself, the roles with the breaching method itself, or our founders, maybe some good reason they had to make it up. Well, part of it was about one thing we know it was about. We look what was all around it. Already black and white had been assigned, and exceptions had been assigned to mean other than they mean, which is that which is hypernated pure. And so to understand this, we have to understand how that was sustained against Native Americans and how the truths, like for example, England's involvements with it. England was only part of the states that had been colonized, and they were distinctly involved with slavery. And look how little England is. See, there's a method of extortion of countries' names, individually grouped and together, tied to where and how we are actually manifest as locations, areas, and states. See, native dreams. I can't find the video that says that. I believe it's a Navajo who say that we must read each other's dreams. So there are a bunch of Native American tribes, thank God, individually grouped and together. They still have below their feet, distinctly from ourselves, but also non-distinctly, the impositions of tactically denatured Earth, its identity, its relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, where it is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously all things. And then further, hyper simultaneously, it shows us that we are the species body is a simultaneous value to ourselves and to our descriptions of itself as all things, individually grouped together. So as a simultaneous nature, there's also sequence nature. And where and how we are the species volume. We are a simultaneous nature, but we are a sequence nature. And it's showing us this, a part of how it's showing us the answer to questions regarding differences, like ages, what our age is about, what our area is about, what our sex is about, male, female, what is difference about, locations, areas, states, ages, areas, sexes. These are about difference. We have the same color eyes while we have different color eyes at the same time. One identity of hyper-simultaneous nature is making more of itself through temporary/lasting identities of forever nature, temporary/lasting. And this is where the ancients revealed as scientific values heaven and hell before modern religions, which were trying to do damage control and still are. And for example, this being relative to where and to how. Both the beginning of the Old Testament one way says that has the only part that matters, and it qualifies. And one way at the beginning of the beginning of the Quran, it says the only thing that people have to be honest about to be a good Muslim is if they're going to be honest about, they believe that the identity that they should call the hyper simultaneous provides transliteration of it. And per science, there's this that identity of simultaneous nature. That is that value, not ourselves, not the other species. But again, to from as within for its orchestration. Positive or negative, though. But where and how? It shows us it will only stay positive unto itself. Otherwise, we stay. We could be systems of it, but it's a negative identity of relationship to itself, and that force space nature transfer, least of Thtis, is more probably having been revealed by the ancients who were led by before the sciences became criminally foreign influence to what really revealed the republic for which we stand. So before we clap each hand, we need injunctive reliefs. And little rap guy and friends are about a plan to do this. And so, for example, the whole cartoon value nature system is now, as our own, is extorted. And that self-value everyone forced to pretend other, as while pretending to be practical. See how they get away with that? It's relative to where and to how. A breaching method employed. Some ways, the most important ways, more than anything else, where and how judges like Judge Napolitano had to start judging with 400 arraignments in one day. That means, it's not just as simple as guilty or non-guilty. Originally, and still, the names of the locations, because the locations themselves are being used to stick fake things in databases as collusions with the crime scenes. The instances, descriptions, the names, descriptions, and or as collusions with the value of what came first. This breaching method understood how reason works. But all stupid jerks stay in their way, humanity prey, of these revelations. See, these are the truth that is with short words. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Except, and there is exceptions, exception nature part with it, etc. Again, we are being shown to answer the question about group differences this way, appreciating the species volume / as science, and positive and negative value nature progressions, acts of nature per its system being distinct from our own, per its definitions of criminally foreign influence being distinct from our own A through Z. Well, how are we going to do it if we don't have the thing? You have been doing it wrong. Oh, but the people are going to say, well, they're going to get out. Of course they're going to get out of jail. The difference, you guys never had a difference. That country's A through Z. Use the names of your countries. Our people use our names of our country. They have roles shared with since before our founders were even born. People from Russia, people from China were involved against their own and our own against our own, same way. It's that identity of relationship to itself that came from semi-ancient times. It's with difference. So there's a Harry Beecher Stowe house and Mark Twain house has rules with the intelligence community. I don't know if formally, but I know to an extent formally because they have roles with syntax and with nature and therefore with the nature of debate. And they have roles with criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quality aspects of nature, black pupils. There are needs and means to speak with passions and to demand not just change, but injunctive reliefs for the people of New York City at all spots, let alone those most impositioned upon, for how things are manifest. It's the best some ways. And we're not, I'm aware. And I'm not leaving that out. See, but that difference too. There is Boolean logic, Boolean. And there are descriptions of Boolean logic and its value. The descriptions of the value of the names of the sciences, which is simultaneously either as the people, names of the people of the sciences, or the names of the sciences. That's being used too, the difference of that, to screen where and how the employment of the sciences by the breaching method is left out with the answers, as the answer, as part of the answer, /s, to what employed. Black and white to mean other as the law's roles, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, criminal insidiousness to the factual nature, quality aspects, and natures of people A through Z. For example, like with values like voting, like with values economic, finance, you know, all finances and financial treatments have stayed criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. And again, this is a method that only has powers if we enter this treatment of what we caught our country's doing, having had means to transverse the earth all this time, having had weapons to killing each other, while still, since before our founders were born, before they had cars. Therefore, they could build homes. They could build the grounds and people's identity of relationship to itself, to nature's positive means to itself, also not nature per its system. There's been a long time, a whole bunch of cases in the past, retired judges, prosecutors, police forms took roles with instances, descriptions. For example, regarding the validity of groupings as criminal enterprises or as criminal insidiousness natures like wrongdoers or wrongdoing itself, as collusions, keeping other things others ourselves, blame for how that is caused, really. So there are intelligence kids when they're really young. They start roles with this. Collusions with predicate acts with facts methods that keep descriptions of instances of names from being honest increasingly. Intercities connected and interstates and international connected. Use /s of it. Only powerful, only mighty, because everyone won't follow mandated law. Where and how we could have that followed properly, which doesn't leave out how the prisons too. They have roles with Central Connecticut State University has roles with the people who teach the intelligence community. They already had roles with all kinds of civil and criminal cases and names with the intelligence community and the interbranch, and the difference of that. And the news at the same time we had collusions. Central Connecticut State University has roles with uses to lie, where they direct where they have the rights to direct the news, to hide things. It's relative to their sensibilities, how they have Asian nations, African nations, South American nations, our neighbors, Mexico and Canada. They have them in collusion with the FBI and with foreign and domestic military and with World Trade Center people in New York City, on and off Central Connecticut State University, on and off Trinity College, planting evidences with the FBI in foreign countries, and they force Saudis to roles with them. And the difference of that is also having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Again, Boolean logic is being used to keep out how exceptions and exception nature is used the way we use it, but it is also as itself. For example, as what really was value and came back what really unfolded first, and as the relativity of all questions. Proper, before the smallest finite details, and really what is the value of the future. That part we don't know about. Just by being knowing that there's the part about the future we don't know about, and trying to be honest, completely, not just honest, trying to examine truth properly of the extent we know. We know there are seasons. Otherwise, there's something in trouble, we're all dead. That's when it's positive, also positive onto everyone at the same time. There are seasons involved, and it's right on the edge. And these seasons individually grouped and together. They show everything, even if you make something up. That story, maybe make up a story, individually grouped and together, all parts of it. See, you guys haven't been allowing ourselves to demonstrate this because you've been staying punk fake games with emotions descriptions that the formal legal identities have, and that the overt criminal enterprises and private ones have and have had. Already, when they spoke for difference in cases, when they speak for culture, people are speaking for culture when they're speaking for the law. Still criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw descriptions of how reason works, of how nature works, of how we are capable of discerning, or how we are not, or the significance of things. And apparent guilt. The news media is recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed that they know that they're supposed to they're directed to hide all the roles that they have with unmarked police forms that are involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. They have roles with the news where they actually have predicate acts with all sides and cases, and with the victims and the doctors of victims. They have collusions against their own victims, their own patients, before they are at crime scenes. They have collusions with use of crime scenes. They have doctors who have badges, who are with their whole families at medical locations, put increasingly collusions there and at other campuses with predicate acts, with facts methods, pretending passions and emotions relative to the answers to how questions like how could everyone say psychopaths to get in the way of anyone who tries to speak with the revelations that come from using nature's answers. So I'll donate nature shows and for YouTube videos that will describe the pantheism games, which I'll also donate if you guys get Judge Napolitano, because I've asked him many times, which is also hyper evidential, for him to get the Connecticut to branch onto paper. I caught them before the World Trade Center attack, planting evidences in roles with predicate acts, with facts, with child offenders, and much worse, and with foreign and domestic military at West Hartford locations, with people on my street in Weatherfield involved with them, and people who went to my grammar school campuses who I never had classes with, who tried to make fake exceptions. Through others try to make fake exceptions, where they're acting constantly, where investigators are constantly being and haven't been used remotely, criminally foreign influenced. So there are families with the name Mendez, and ones with the name Leahy and Lombardo. A Leahy family, I never had a word of conversation with any of them. They pretended through the mail too, and at Hartford Hospital that they had conversations with me there. And they have the FBI and other various natures of federal criminals and organized crime bodies associated with himself and with their family members and friends, and people involved with the news, also with predicate acts at corners of streets and next to schools with them. And further with the principal upskirt nature, note with the also roles with further child abuses and as roles with names that were placed at elderly homes and are involved with on off the veterans locations, on off the prisons. These are people on off the corrections offices at the town line, Weathersfield, at the other side of the, where Weathersfield and Hartford are touching on Franklin Avenue. Has something to do with that and the sides of it. And next to that, like the three spots at the end of the Brown Turnpike, increasingly there are people from that location involved with the intelligence community has been identity theft, fraud, slander against me, attaching me to faked and changed conversations with everyone around me too, including my family, including with these people, with judges and prosecutors and their family members, with the agencies juxtaposed. And where how the branches of government have predicate acts with facts, methods, roles, at the same time with American history, with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and with the employments of the logic and nature of people A through Z. And then our founders were born, and that was through our founders' lives because they were still being tortured and extorted, and we have not dealt with the torture, extortion, in fact, human nature, slavery that had been leveraged sickly, distinctly against everyone, let alone against, against George Washington, let alone against George Washington and James Madison and his plan simultaneously. So, but we have that plan only partially effected. Now it says, get the Constitution on a bridge. And it says we have innumerable rights. That we won't have to cite some kind of statute while they're reading criminally foreign influence statutes and leaving out exception nature. And when they are not, there are collusions with that too. But per worse, forgiveness is not to give up, but not to leave out the also hyper foreign, criminally hyper foreign influence. And the method, too, has the sense and sensibilities of those other countries. Like Germany has roles with Central Connecticut State University and with people along Route 175 with KKK-themed and Black-themed military police who are also medical offenders, involved with medical families, like this Leahy family, involved with predicate acts, putting fake and lying about themselves and others into databases at schools and over the, in life. And I think that roles all sides in criminal and civil cases. And the judges, there are multiple families of judges tied to, like one's named Delaferro, tied to Delaferro family, a Scalora family ones, and Spada family, as ones involved with wire crimes of Weathersfield police, and a Ray Collusion and people that have been planting evidences with people tied with and as people associated with body dumping spots. At the same time, threats further with guns and other knives threats, poison threats, and rape threats. And these are other passion crimes that were off campuses with the people who then did it on Facebook after the World Trade Center attack. These are people that were doing that from a distance. They don't let you get the name. And they're switching the roles of the other names. People with the name Demoro and Cololo attached to me. Also, they have family members. They said it was their cousin, a Scalora. Weathersfield police came to my house. One, and I don't know if it was them or some other kind of police, forced themselves through the door. And I didn't make anything. And then he said, don't mess with the score, and went to try to turn off his thing or whatever. And I didn't say anything. Then he left and he gave me a card. I didn't invite him, and he forced himself in the house and made a threat to me. And these are one of the ones that are refusing to identify themselves and switching names. Three different arresting officers used the name McGee. Weatherfield police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed simultaneously too that they only have one officer named McGee in each police report, where they left out how there were people involved with the predicate acts, incredible threats of violence and acts of violence against me, as people entitled to this Hartford hospital since I was a kid, attaching little kids to fake conversations with themselves and with other people all around them, searching for truths to use for lies, to stacks to hide what came first. Increasingly, these are people involved with the locations next to the news locations and all along roads and routes as their motivations. Because this breaching method uses location slash S. Then it taught people how to use computers, how to speak about psychology, Boolean logic. They're tactically delusions wrought with psychology, black pupils. Get them on paper. Watch what I caught them doing. Whole bunch of foreign and domestic juxtaposed families with these ones with the shared predicate acts on my street, all sides of my house and all sides of their houses, and how they bring up people's names with the intelligence community and within mayors involved. Has something to do with remote uses of mayors from Weathersfield from since before I was born. People increasingly with whiting forensics involved intercities with police departments with wire crimes with the same house slash S involved with them involved. A guy named with the name Britt. It's Britt. In other words, with Hartford Hospital, one of their nurses. In other words, involved with he brought up the name D. Simone. Is one of the ones with Newington police forms, foreign and domestic military. I've been asking you guys to stop leaking and get on paper with the Weathersfield police who brought up the name Sullivan too. There are people that my sixth grade class, when I was a kid, they said that Lance Cuddy was involved with that. And then I caught them from Hartford Hospital who said that Chet Casper or Casper family. Casper families involved also, I don't know his father's name. They have Casper families involved with the putting, with medical offenders of kids and foreign and domestic criminal people, criminally foreign influence uses of spots next to the state capitol and their roles lying about themselves and others and about their motivations for it. Has something to do with their roles all along, spots all along the Berlin Turnpike. And their teachers, they have roles with teachers involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with the kids, and their roles with the intelligence community, and ducking behind that with all the countries involved. Mike Pandolf and Ray Reynolds have roles with Saudis. They forced the collusions with them, with predicate acts, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various natures of overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and in their roles even with prostitution and with child offenders, sexual and medical as adults, with attaching other kids to fake roles and needing roles with them, with the stuff next to the Hartford Hospital with them, with that, and increasingly the Intelligence Act, Central Connecticut State University involved, as names on next to the campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, increasingly as roles next to the state judicial branch offices, like Weathersfield Pizza has roles with more people involved with child abuses and their roles with identity thefts and frauds, slanders, and men and women who grew up as little boys and girls, attaching others to fake locations, fake ties to themselves, fake natures of ties to themselves, and fake sequence relationships to themselves, where there are exceptions. And they have their teachers involved between campuses I never saw them on too. Increasingly, these are people involved with Hartford Hospital with Eric, with a whole bunch of names tied to the same house involved with the Weatherfield police and the name Sullivan stacked onto the roles with the ones with the name McGee. And they've been preventing me the falsified a police report to respond to because the crime methods they use with that. They've also been planting fake emails, changing what's actually recorded on social media and hiding it and putting fake emails at the same time. roles with more people, with the upskirt natures, with the kids, with the leaders of them, has something to do with their roles with the school resource officers and their family members, and their roles with the shopping centers and the malls too. And as the ones on and off the campuses, attaching kids on campuses that are 24/7 recorded to fake ties to each other, fake natures of ties to each other that were never on campus at all. So, in other words, they have a dean judge involved with the Eric Burgess, involved with Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court, and Dean Judge's family members that influenced him to spread federal evidence of crimes with child offenders and others they don't know about from Wethersfield. They only know extent of it. These are people on off the state judicial branch offices all along Route 3. And everywhere they go with the intelligence family since they were kids. These are people pretending passions and emotions, and then they're pretending it's personal because they need to keep out the foreign bodies. Forgiveness is to get them on paper. It's to force the quality of fact human nature here. So that's why they're leaking this too. They have Wethersfield police have roles with Afghans and with the military. They have roles with the Eastern States Narcotic Drug Task Force, with some foreign and domestic military families on Central Connecticut State University, associated with the Kolvinskis, as one of the ones who planted evidence is also on my street with the medical families, foreign and domestic, and KKK black themed medical families with fake conversations with kids at Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of people tied to them who have been predicates to my street with ones with the name Dylan too. And it has something to do with the intelligence community roles with the community center of Wethersfield and the Wethersfield town offices. So they are leaking this. That's where the Wethersfield police used to be. It's also with names next to where they are now. People on their Facebook pages too, on the Facebook page of the Britain Superior Court and of Wethersfield police. They have further roles with wire crimes at Trinity College with a guy who says his name is Darth Vader, and people involved with Afghan kids and leaders involved with some Los Solitos with people on my street that used to live on my street who are on Trinity College. I don't know their names or their switching names. And I had been living in apartments for about a decade. And so my neighbors, they put me in fake ties to the ones that were living here at the time. And one of them they brought onto the campus there, Trinity College, and onto and I never saw him on a Wethersfield campus. And the elderly home, one of the elderly homes involved in the spots next to it, which is next to the spots, 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, have increasingly roles with the judges and prosecutors and state police families and Wethersfield police families, Hartford police families, and medical families have been planting evidences at intercities. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, lying about themselves and others, including with the news. They're getting away with it because they're hiding behind the countries, but they're leaking that, so that's going to go away because they had this used before the World Trade Center attack and every year since. And that when people speak, they're lying about what they think about what they're saying. Their readings of statutes are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. And so it's going to be called out now. We have to follow mandated law, have them follow mandated law. They have more people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the schools that attach me to fake conversations with themselves, as involved with all kinds of confessions or on answer machine messages that the principal child abuser made and brought up more names. There's a Mike Levine. There are people all along Route 3 further involved with news, planting. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves. These are the sources of Fox News. These are the sources of CNN. These are the sources of MSNBC. These are the sources of influences over people of the social media companies to put fake motivations for where and how they have self-collusions with former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, in his defendant capacities with names they have further, like a Leahy family, further with sexual pictures and other natures of pictures, and the difference of that on Facebook with grammar school kids. I'm going to show you how to deal with child offenders under the guises of counters to such, because that's what's been. And see, you guys, trying to warn you guys, you know, you got the history told tactically wrong, and that's exploited. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College have people on my street who are involved with home break-ins and uses of them roles with people at Church Street in Old Weathersfield, involved with natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with child offenders, and they're lying in their roles with the intelligence community since they were kids. So that all natures of employment and value treatments are screwed up, and their natures of names treatments, uses of all instances. This was shown to them where and how they're used remotely. So follow mandated law, because these are people further on in the World Trade Center, involved pretending passions and emotions too, as the ones switching and forging names, with the wire crimes of the Weathersfield police, planting evidence on sides in my house too. They have roles with more guns and knife threats and poison threats. So let's get them on paper and do things peacefully. Let's get the Judge Napolitano, please. Follow mandated law. I'm going to show you how to deal with violence. Come peacefully. You guys have failed to show how to do this because you have state collusions, people lying to you in the background. Get them on name, one name in sequence. They have further people with the name powers on people out from Central Connecticut State University increasingly have roles with the digital community, with police forms involved with digital crimes, with digital sex offenders. Weathersfield Police have ones with the name Powers, and the FBI and the other Rocky Hill Police families and Newington Police families involved. So make sure they get on paper. And what's the name of the one who said he was who was reportedly was a roommate of Ray Collusion? These are people involved with the intelligence community with a club downtown Hartford, and this Russian lady, and with different ownerships, different names. The intelligence community, including the military, criminally foreign influence, ones with the World Trade Center attack roles, also tied to the ones with this name Mark Violet and Mike Violet, with the ones with the Collusion, with the KKK black themed military police pretending to legitimately be with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids. And whether identity thefts and frauds, putting falsified police reports, wire crimes with these police, switching names, putting fake motivations. Oh, boy, this is my brother. This one's like, get down one paper name. Get him on that paper now. You guys are preventing me from bringing up the other murder things and stuff you have enrolls with. And you can't go speak with them because they already pretended I had conversations with them as a kid and now as an adult. The police can't be trusted, so we're going to speak here. And you're going to get them to fix the fake news and stop leaking about how they're hiding behind the different countries involved, like the Asians involved. And what are you guys doing with that killer with the exits and entrances near West Farmers Mall? And what are you doing with them, with these ones on my street with the name Collusion tied to this Bob Chase? And a Bob Chase said a Phil Collusion. And now there's still this summer there's a Phil Collusion further involved with the child offenders in the falsified police reports, planting evidence on my street. He was riding a bicycle. First time I ever saw him on my street. I don't know if I saw him in the car. I couldn't tell if it was him one time before. I don't know what he drives. Phil Collusion, as one of the ones with whiting forensics when I was a kid too, involved with the body stomach spot of Billy Grasso, and people involved with the whiting forensics, as people further involved with the home break-ins and uses of them with other natures of organized crime that were going on and are going on every intercities through time. And they have uses of sound and quiet neighborhood, for example, with descriptions of people's neighborhoods where they make people self-value roles with forcing quality facts, human nature, quality aspects, and nature as collusions against themselves, like pupils. So the suburbs were designed for torture, extortion, and slavery. what the cities were used to functionally to measure and maintain collusions with that, or the body was sensed, even if that body is a majority and that is adapted to, even if it is a majority of countries. So you have to all be the you have to be healed with how to understand how to think, and with the short words and where and how at each age you are actually capable of discernment of these revelations. We're actually capable when we were very young of appreciating how individually grouped in together there was a breaching method that we could discern against the Native Americans, and that we did not want that as part of how we could discern it. They are being forced off of that native system that appreciates what we know. It knows why. Some ways they're way more about Native Americans are way more about why Americans hunger and thirst than any suit and tie ever spoke for. See president slash chief and see chief slash president simultaneously, distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously, hyper simultaneously. But you guys can't do that, even though that nature of appreciation of it means brings evolution, fruits, gifts, means, and reliefs out of nowhere. It means to it. So we have to do this as a species body, sequentially slash simultaneously. Otherwise, because each name was already used by the breaching method in ways that can't afford to have discerned, which nature is showing us how they were used and by what. But this is where they are left out, where people speak things to be practical, leaving stuff out because everything is left out by everyone else. When they make metaphors, analogies, for example, as intelligence, when they're describing things, we could use the hyper-evidential to transverse the earth, and had all this time with nuclear weapons and things like that, peak strength and might, instead of while self-valuing the suburbs having been tactically denatured, reliant upon food means from other areas. They're barely worms coming out of the soil. I don't even see them anymore. You had to put all kinds of leaves for years, try to put, and now I see one, the soil's dying. The system is tactically ulterior. Since the only reason it lasted so long is because of how they made the difference between rules with this too used. The way to stay on it, what to do, is to stay on what is true always, and why and how. It is not just that we have the same color eyes. It's not just because we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, and the value of that. It's distinct, it's non-distinct, and it's simultaneous relationship to itself. It's being shown to us as increasing value distinctly from, but hyper additionally from. It's active, and it's it is the value of what came true, what was true before the smallest finite detail of the Republic now. And it shows us the increasing value of understanding that breaching method uses differences, so we use Native American difference. So we use the president's difference. Now they had to communicate to us, so the breaching method had to hear them too. It was already sophistication. It was already sophistication that had propagated all other natures of sophistication as tactical pseudo-sophistication, not just as pseudo-sophistication, / hyper-tactical pseudo-sophistication. Categorically, too, like pupils. So we have bring reliefs for the longest time. How many space means come out of nowhere? The second American city or a world city says unified to the rest of their country, please help us get some temporary locations for some of the people most stacked upon. And so we could use those opened up positions to work together and to make a little organization admitting this and preparing to get, you know, the help of the species volume unabridged. Then we could get presidents to write injunctive relief, executive orders. Then we could get other countries' leaders because we can get locations, areas, and states admitting and out from being self-valued uses of criminally foreign influence factory miniature quality aspects in nature in the way of descriptions proper, black pupils, of our questions and as their answers. And who needs to know them and to tell them truth first. So one of the things we're going to have to get away too is pretending to see who's reading or doing their homework. You put it in physics before. Fear, to hide and block. I rap a lot. Fix the fake conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack and get them onto paper. Eric Virgin is one of the names, and his family has a mother and a father and people associated with a religious spot near his house and fire department. There's people involved with a Dean Judd, and there's a people tied to a Dean Alford involved with some murders. And not him, I'm sure he didn't murder anybody. But there's a Joshua Stryker is involved on off the state judicial branch offices, lying about himself and others. About himself and others in identity theft, fraud, claims as investigators pretending these are legitimate investigations. These are people that have been using investigations and investigators remotely by attaching people to fake transcripts. They have roles in planting evidences with the FBI and its co-defendants and with the other unions too, and their family members at corners of buildings, little tricks where they make fake communications where there are none. And then these are people who have roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases. The interbranch and the difference between the exceptions tied to them. There are also ones involved with the state corrections offices, with wire crime action methods, with names near me, and people associated with the witness protection program, and people involved with other criminal enterprises, involved with judges, involved with this Joshua Stryker and people associated with him, like also like what's his name? Jeremy Grohl and Subby Bajario. Years ago, they saw me out, record, confess, demonstrate, confirm when I was a sophomore. And then after in other words, they were men and women that were their teachers. I never had a class with them, but they have their teachers involved with the intelligence community, and judges and their extended family members, and prosecutors and their extended family members, and medical families, foreign and domestic, same thing. They've been speaking fake things tied to and as people roles, also typing fake things into databases. Wire crime action whole methods of them, where sometimes it's completely made up conversations. Other times they're saying things after they already said other things, and they're pretending to record it. They're increasingly using investigators, criminally foreign influence. Years before Mazzucato Bakery was at that corner of the street on Elm Street and Route 3, they have rules with people with the name Collusion involved with wire crimes, acts, and methods with them, attaching little kids to fake conversations with themselves and with others, police forms, and with medical families and judges. And increasingly intercities, there are people roles with uses of this, inclusions with it, like people with the name Corone. There's a Jamie Corone who's on even on Facebook, involved further with child offenders on digital. New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts have roles with digital, a principal upskirt nature in their Facebook pages of their courts, with the people with passion crimes, with the deans and their family members and intimate ties and others on off the places. And that's how they're being used criminally for an influence. Has something to do with a park near there too. In a Joe a Joseph Dennis. I never had a class with a Joseph Dennis. His neighbors were involved with medical corruption, with mayors, foreign and domestic, people involved with overt criminal enterprises, and child offenders, leaders of the kids. Mayor Gold and his family members increasingly involved with people involved with untimely deaths and timed collusions with that, and pretending passions and emotions as behavior racketeering roles with investigators, fake motivations planting on off the sides of parks, on next to schools, as roles with cases, all sides of criminal civil cases, their sources, the interbranch putting fake things in databases at the same time. The difference of them doing it, the intelligence, like whiting forensics, increasingly roles with wire crimes, and people involved with corners of streets like this Joshua Stryker. A Joshua Stryker is involved with the corner people, families involved with shipping locations, and their roles of my name, criminally foreign influence, all along Griswold Street, like the corner of Griswold Street and Fair Lane Drive. People have been pretending passions and emotions. All exceptions and exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing, and they brought it up too. Something to do with their roles with some shootings and murders and body dumping spots and confessions about all these things and untimely deaths, and roles with one on Trinity College that people on my street had roles with the names involved with it, and with shootings. These same names that have roles on Zion Street and the other sides of Trinity College since I was a kid, and people next to all sides of Central Connecticut State University. They've been planting fake exceptions of people knowing each other, etc. So they have roles all these different countries with wire crime acts and methods, medicines crimes, reason crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders, methods. They switch names at the branch, so and they prevent writing on a mass scale. Connecticut, intercity, interstates. These are people on off the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center towers, right before the attack, and since it, and long term before the attack, they plotted and had roles with then and since to hide it. Has something to do with their roles with uses of names next to the campuses, intercity, timed uses of that, collusions with identity theft, fraud, slanders, people associated with investigators of all nature, including judges. Increasingly, they speak faking loaded statements and then pretend that there were responses when there were none, for example, at locations. Sandy Hook has roles with the intelligence community increasingly involved with this, including the victims' advocates, their doctors, and courts associated with them, and cases involved. Alex Jones also has roles with this, preventing mandated law. Get them out the paper with the principal child offender also involved further with Sandy Hook campuses names, involved with predicate acts of other natures, mixed natures of organized crime, and uses of the difference of that. Let me show you. There are people with the name O'Brien also involved with that. Increasingly, it's people involved with the spots next to the state capitol involved with natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders. So get them on paper. Let's go.